In the village of Umune, they say that when a child is born with a bright star, the very trees bow in their direction. Sandra was that child. From the day she took her first breath, there was a glow about her that no amount of dust or poverty could dim. Her laughter sounded like silver coins falling into a wooden bowl, and her spirit was as light as a feather on a harmattan breeze. But life in Umune was not easy. Sandra grew up in a small mud house with her mother, a widow who sold roasted corn by the roadside. Despite their lack, Sandra never looked poor. She had a way of wearing a faded wrapper that made it look like expensive lace. She had a way of speaking to the elders that made them bless her without even thinking. By her side always was Rose. If Sandra was the sun, Rose was the moon, but a moon that was tired of reflecting someone else's light. They were inseparable. They fetched water from the same stream, they shared the same plate of ugba, and they whispered their dreams to each other under the moonlight. One day, Sandra, Rose would say, staring at the stars, "We will leave this village. We will go to the city. We will wear shoes that make a clack-clack sound on the floor, and we will never have to smell the smoke of a cooking fire again." Sandra would smile and squeeze Rose's hand. "We will do it together, Rose. My success is your success." But as the years passed, the gap between them began to show. It wasn't that Rose wasn't hard-working. She was. But while Sandra would plant a single seed and harvest a basket, Rose would plant a whole field and barely get a handful. When they went to the market to sell their wares, people would bypass Rose's stall even though her tomatoes were fresher just to buy from Sandra. They said Sandra's hands brought luck. They said her star made their food taste better. The envy didn't start as a fire. It started as a small, cold stone in Rose's heart. Every time a young suitor brought palm wine to Sandra's house and ignored Rose, the stone grew heavier. Every time the village elders praised Sandra's wisdom and called Rose the friend, the stone grew sharper. When they turned 20, the dream of the city finally came true. An uncle of Sandra's secured jobs for them in a prestigious textile firm in Lagos. The transition was like moving from one world to another. The noise, the lights, the constant motion, it was exhilarating. Sandra thrived. Within 6 months, she wasn't just a sales girl. She was the floor manager. She had a natural eye for patterns and a way of talking to wealthy clients that made them spend millions. She met Daniel, a handsome engineer with a heart of gold. Daniel didn't just love Sandra, he respected her. He saw the star in her and wanted to protect it. Rose, on the other hand, struggled. She was constantly late. She made mistakes with the accounts, and she felt invisible in the shadow of Sandra's rising fame. She lived in the apartment provided by Sandra, ate Sandra's food, and wore Sandra's clothes. The turning point was the night of the promotion party. Sandra had just been named the regional director. She stood on a stage in a glittering gold dress, Daniel by her side, holding a glass of champagne. The room was filled with the elite of Lagos, all of them clapping and chanting Sandra's name. Rose stood in the corner, holding a tray of appetizers. She looked at her reflection in a silver platter. She saw a woman who was tired, bitter, and fading. She looked at Sandra and saw a woman who was drinking the very essence of life. Why her? Rose whispered to the shadows. "We come from the same soil. We drank the same water. Why did God give her everything and give me the scraps?" That was the night the stone in Sandra's heart turned into a serpent. She didn't want a job anymore. She didn't want a suitor. She wanted Sandra's very soul. Rose knew that no amount of hard work would ever make her Sandra. She needed a shortcut. She began to ask questions in the dark corners of the city, seeking out those who dealt in exchange. She was eventually led to a spiritualist who lived in a house that the sun never seemed to touch. The air inside the shrine was thick with the smell of dried blood and old secrets. He didn't ask Rose what she wanted. He already knew. "You seek to harvest where you did not plant," he said, his voice sounding like dry leaves skittering across a grave. "I want her life," Rose said, her voice trembling but firm. "I want her luck, her man, her beauty, and her future. I am tired of being the shadow." The spiritualist laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "A destiny is not a piece of clothing you can just put on, daughter. It is a flame. To take it, you must first extinguish her spirit. You must capture her reflection." He handed her the mirror of exchange. It was framed in dark, polished wood that felt unnaturally cold. When she is in her deepest sleep, when her soul is wandering the dream world, you must hold this mirror over her heart. The mirror will call out to her, "Star." The light will leave her and enter you. But listen well. The destiny will be yours only as long as she remains in the dark. If she ever sees her true self in this mirror again, the star will return home and it will burn you to ashes on its way out. Rose returned home, the mirror hidden in the folds of her clothes. For 3 nights, she couldn't do it. She looked at Sandra sleeping, looking so peaceful and innocent, and she felt a flicker of the old friendship. But then she would remember the promotion, the engagement ring, and the way the world looked at Sandra, and the flicker would die. On the 4th night, the moon was swallowed by clouds. A heavy silence hung over the apartment. Sandra was exhausted from wedding planning and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. Rose crept into the room. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She pulled out the mirror. The wood felt like ice against her palms. She positioned it directly over Sandra's chest. "Sandra," Chica whispered into the darkness, "give me what you don't deserve." A low, vibrating hum began to fill the room. Suddenly, a faint golden mist began to rise from Sandra's skin. It was beautiful and terrifying. The mist thickened into a glowing orb, pulsating with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The orb hovered for a moment, illuminating the room with a warm, celestial light. And then, with a sharp whoosh, it was sucked into the surface of the mirror. Sandra let out a long, shuddering sigh in her sleep. Her skin, which usually looked like polished bronze, suddenly turned the color of damp wood. Her features seemed to sag as if the bones beneath were losing their strength. Rose felt a jolt of pure energy move up her arms. Her vision sharpened. Her skin began to tingle. She ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. She gasped. She didn't just look better, she looked vibrant. Her eyes had a new magnetic depth. She felt a confidence she had never known. The star was hers. The next morning, the world shifted. Sandra woke up feeling as though she had been beaten with clubs. Her head throbbed and her limbs felt like lead. When she looked in the mirror to get ready for work, she shrieked, "Rose! Rose! Come quickly!" Rose ran in, looking radiant in a simple housecoat. "What is it, Sandra?" "Look at me. My face. I look so tired. I look sick." Rose feigned concern, but inwardly she was gloating. "Oh, my dear, it's just the stress of the wedding. You need rest. Why don't you stay home? I'll go to the office and handle your meetings." That was the beginning of the end. When Rose walked into the textile firm, the security guards, who usually barely nodded at her, stood up straight and saluted. The CEO, who usually walked past her to get to Sandra, stopped and stared. "Rose, you look different today. There's a certain power in your walk. Come, sit in my office. I have some ideas I want to discuss." While Ross was conquering the boardroom, Sandra was grumbling at home. She couldn't think. Every time she tried to look at a spreadsheet, the numbers danced away. Her memory started to fail. She forgot Daniel's birthday. She forgot the names of her top clients. Within a month, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. Sandra was demoted for gross incompetence and mental instability. In the same breath, Rose was promoted to take her place. The betrayal hit the bedroom next. Daniel came over for dinner, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't bring flowers for Sandra. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were glued to Rose. "Sandra," Daniel said, his voice cold and distant. "You've changed. You're always complaining. You look grey." Rose is the one who is actually keeping the business together. She's the one who listens to me. "Daniel, what are you saying?" Sandra cried, her voice cracking. "I'm the same person." "No," Daniel said, standing up to leave. "You're not. You're a shadow of the woman I loved." With the star firmly planted in Rose's chest, the spiritual weight of the theft began to manifest in the physical world. Sandra didn't just lose her job and her man, she lost her place in the fabric of reality. One morning, she returned to the apartment they shared, only to find her boxes sitting on the curb, soaked by a sudden, angry rain. Rose stood on the balcony, looking down like a queen surveying a fallen peasant. She was wearing Sandra's favourite silk robe, her skin glowing with a radiance that felt stolen because it was. "I'm sorry, Sandra," Rose said, her voice dripping with a fake, sugary pity. "But the landlord says you're a liability now. Since you lost your position at the firm, you can't keep up with the lifestyle. Daniel and I have decided to keep the place. We need the space for the wedding preparations."